The Dark Muses, the new gods of the Dark Eldar. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. If you wish to see the channel flourish, then like and subscribe, but also consider joining our Patreon or throwing a one-off tip in the form of a super thanks if I have indeed earned your bounty. And today, we shall be taking a look at the denizens of the dark city of Commorragh, what they believe and what terrors they now worship. I usually provide a wee tale in these entries, but I'm not today, as the subject matter is so dark, and I am attempting to provide you all with a veritable banquet of self-written story in the form of a bumper edition of the Thaddeus this week. Old sod that I am, I find staring into the deepest darkness of the setting grueling at times. So please do forgive me in this one instance. Now, let us get into the meat and veg of the matter in hand. The Dark Muses of Commorragh. The Dark Kin, as they are called, are the most evil thing in the setting, and by quite some margin. One might blanch and shout, "Nay, that must be the Dark Gods of Chaos." But is it true? Not really. For the Dark Gods are like children, beings of infinite id. Their drives, urges, like near omnipotent toddlers, crying out for more of that which sustains and engorges them. And evil is not, in my mind, in the wrong act. It is the decision to do that which a person knows to be antithetical to all that is right. Hence, I do not really consider the Dark Gods of Chaos as evil, but a manifestation of those urges that drive it, or are the result of its acts. But of course, all of their worshippers, who make the decision to besmirch themselves, they are evil. The Dark Gods are not evil, as they have not the wit or soul to make the decision. They cannot change, cannot develop, cannot do anything other than that which they do. They are collections of soul stuff, this is true, but they do not technically have a soul. They cannot decide to be nice or pleasant or selfless, hence they are not able to make the distinction. They do not measure actions and choose. They are forces of nature, or more to put it, malign forces of un-nature. Do you blame the tsunami or the earthquake for the death and destruction they create? No logical person can. Only a sentient being can decide, can make the choice to do that which is repellent, selfish, destructive, and cruel. Or, on the other hand, to act selflessly and to be kind. Hence, it is the Dark Eldar that are, for me, the pinnacle of evil within the grim darkness of the far future. Some might mule that they do these outrageous acts to sustain themselves, that they too are like vampires who cannot truly make the choice. They do these things to exist. But this is not true. Cruelty, spite, and evil are always a choice. They could have invested their time in working out how to save their damned souls, but instead they wallow in their depravity, the exact emotions and actions, decisions and choices that led to the fall of their people and the damnation of their entire race. They choose this as much as anyone who performs acts of evil. But worse, the Dark Eldar embrace it wholeheartedly. Attempting to push the envelope, they explore the depths of depravity and degradation, not like some conscript sent out to die, but like intrepid adventurers attempting to bring their art to new levels of excruciating horror. Now some think that religion shows the true nature and subconscious of its adherents. In the worship of the Dark Muses, we see the face of the Dark Eldar revealed. For the Eladrith and Nice of Commorragh do not worship the ancient deities of the Eldar, and they have not for quite some millennia before the rise of She Who Thirsts, the name of Slaanesh amongst the Eldar. It is one of the main reasons that she became so powerful and was able to consume the Eldar homeworlds in her birth scream. Starved of worship, which is the universal currency of the warp, their existing gods weakened and became shadows of their former glory. Yet, as with near everything involving the warp and the setting entire, this is a gross simplification of the matter, but for brevity, it is why they died. And die they did. When Slaanesh finally awoke, it went on a rampage, defeating and consuming every Eldar thought construct or deity. Only 3 eluded her slathering maw. Kayla mentioned Khaine, the bloody-handed god of war, who was shattered and forced into the real world, its shards scattering and finding their final resting place within each of the craft worlds of the Eldar. Isha, who was captured by mighty Nurgle and forced to be his plaything from that moment until today. And, of course, the trickster, the jester, lord of the Harlequins, Segara, who fled to the webway, it is said. Yet, the Dark Eldar are so egotistical, so jaded, so irreverent, that they did not mourn the loss of their gods. They did not really even regret the birth of the collection of their misdeeds, for that is surely what Slaanesh is, the personification of their evils. No, the Dark Eldar looked upon their transformation and the death of their gods as justification for their actions. Why would they worship such beings, the gods, when they had been defeated and consumed so easily? The Dark Eldar believed that the existence of Slaanesh as proof of their previous actions and decisions. The old ways, those of light and harmony and benevolence, were the true curse. The Dark Eldar see themselves as artists and trailblazers that truly pushed the boundaries of existence and sensation. So, they think they are the future. The strangest thing to many is that the Dark Eldar have just enough of their old glory left to realize that they cannot worship She Who Thirsts, Slaanesh. Although, as always, there are exceptions that prove the rule. Those lines of inquiry and lore have been ignored for a good many decades now. Some things even the setting writers try to fade down on, one might presume, or the company simply does not wish to engage in more versatility in Chaos Warbands. It is hard to tell in a situation where models can have an effect on the way lore is created, and the setting bends to the needs of the marketing department. But we move on. The reality of the issue is that the Dark Eldar are as terrified of Slaanesh as any of their Craftworld, Harlequin, or Exodite kin, their cousins. Probably more so, for they can feel her supping on their life force with every second of every day. And in this, they show their arrogance and cowardice. They who brought her into being, they who sustain her and birthed her, cannot take the final step and embrace their creation. They shy from Slaanesh as much as any Imperial Inquisitor, hate her as deeply as even the Emperor of Mankind, who knows the fullest extent of her wickedness and dire threat to all of his race, us, humanity. In the final analysis, the Dark Eldar are all cowards. But if the Dark Eldar do not worship Slaanesh, She Who Thirsts, then what do they worship? Now many might quite logically surmise that they do not worship anything at all. Yet, in the grim darkness of the far future, it seems that Lorgar was in fact correct. That all sentient beings in the setting will eventually crave their spiritual void to be filled by supplication to another, a greater being. Tau withstanding, of course. But they are a race in their infancy, taking their first steps out into the universe. With age, Even they may fall to religious belief, if the overwhelming evidence from all other races in the narrative can be seen as examples of that which is, not that which people wish it to be. Not even the imperial truth was able to resist the onward march of faith, after all. But the Dark Eldar do indeed perform some form of worship. They give supplication and libation unto forces they believe will aid them, assist them. Characteristically, they do not have a single entity that actually provides protection, as the soul of the Dark Eldar is twisted indeed. It is the very pinnacle of Darwinian combative prowess. The strong will always dominate the weak. The weak are less than even their ability to sustain the strong. They are less than nothing. So if one worships for protection, one is weak. Hence the Dark Eldar pray to gain edges over their enemies, nuggets of potence to tip the scales in their favor only. And these beings that they pray to for these nudges are the Dark Muses. The actual detail of the Muses are simple, never being really explored to date, but their origins and particulars are what are truly and tragically hilarious. For the Dark Muses are suspected to be Dark Eldar who have passed away, but were paragons of their art. Yes, the Dark Eldar deify their own kind. They worship themselves. Pathetic, no. Like the elevation of Gaius Julius Caesar upon his death, they worship paragons of their own people, or so at least it is suspected. The Dark Eldar cannot conceive of anything being higher than themselves, could not possibly worship one of their own while they lived. Well, with another exception to the rule being the self-proclaimed Dark Muse status of Asdrubal Vecht, of course. But we shall get to him in the future. And, to a limited extent, Kayla Mencher Khaine still has a few adherents remaining, but it would not be in his guise of war god in particular, but as god of murderers. Pleasant bunch, eh? So, let us do the quick rundown of their Dark Muses. Shemesh, Lord of Poisons. As a deity, they state Shemesh is the brother of Samhan, the cosmic serpent, but it is far more likely that he was an expert poisoner whose name became a byword for assassination via poisons. Lilitu, consort of the void, the patron of the Lamians, those dark consorts courted by every archon worth his salt, known as inventive bedmates and poisoners. Again, their existence in the court of an archon is a must if they are to be seen as on the rise, or one of the mighty. And to be anything less than the Dark City spells certain doom. Vileth, the manifestation of towering arrogance, is a patron of many an archon, and patron also of pilots of Razorwings and Void Ravens, the hellish flight groups of the Dark Eldar. Hekatai, the Red Crone, patron of the pits, given glory by the witch cults of the battle arenas, the Dark Eldar women who deal death with speed and grace. To pay the tithe to Hekatai is more seen as a payment to prevent tragedy than to gain favour. One slip in the pits would spell certain doom again, so she is paid more as a protection racket than a kindly mother. Qualeth, the mistress of blades. Now she is given her due to provide the prowess and luck also required to survive the fighting pits, again paid by the witches of the arena. Yeneth, the Dark Muse who has the adherents of the Cabal of the Onyx Scar, although it has never been truly stated on its position or what one could possibly gain for giving in its name. And to be frank, it is probably a mercy that we do not know. The Dark Eldar are to a man or woman vile beyond reckoning. but one that is infused with strength born from the conviction that their dark deity is on their side, well, they are, if anything, even worse. All one can truly say about the Dark Muses is that if they do exist in the warp, then they must be cunning entities indeed, for they have avoided the Maw of Slaanesh, and they reflect the twisted perspective and hatred of all living sentient beings that is the defining characteristic of the Dark Kin. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Now I do have a bit of a cold, so I do apologize for my slightly more gravelly voice. Like and subscribe, tip if you think I have earned your bounty, and do check out the video description for other entertainment opportunities. But most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.